Hello guys, we are back in new fanfic, and if enjoying this then please share and like part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. Haha, well don't bury me yet. I hope to continue for another 5 years at least, replied the age leader. The cage made no mention or motion toward the Hokage's Jonin bodyguard as the man was giving the Suna leader a sidelong glance that seemed to be sending kunai at the man for his disrespectful statement towards the Hokage. Throughout the seating of the arena, most of the genin from Teams 7, 8, 9, and 10, that had not advanced, along with some of their Jonin sensei were seated together to watch the coming matches. The most active of these spectators was the one member of Team 7 that didn't advance, Sakura Haruno, teammate of Naruto and Sasuke. Sakura is a fair-skinned girl, who is the same age as Naruto, who has light green eyes and pink hair reminiscent of her namesake. She was wearing a red kipao dress, which has slits running up both sides of the dress, which has a zipper going up the center to her left hip with white embroidery along the length and the sleeves along with a white liner. On the sleeves in the bottom front and back of the dress are white circles. Underneath she was wearing knee-length, dark green biking shorts. On her right thigh she had her kunai holster while her utility pouch was over the back of the right side of her hip. She was wearing blue shinobi sandals. She was a nervous wreck. One of her teammates and sensei have yet to arrive while her other teammate, Naruto, was going to fight someone who showed they would have no regrets if they'd a comrade. She must have been wearing her worries on her face as her best friend spoke up. Chill out, forehead. Sasuke-kun will be here on time, said her best friend, Ino Yamanaka. Ino was also a fair-skinned girl that was the same height as Sakura. She has pupilless, sky blue eyes and platinum blonde hair with a long bang that fell over her right eye while the rest was tied into a light yellow bun holder. She was wearing a burnt orange shirt with a thick black stripe that ran from the collar to the sleeve over the shoulder with forest green shorts along with blue shinobi sandals. I know Sasuke-kun will be here. I'm worried if he will be here on time. Kakashi-sensei has a habit of arriving late and I'm worried he will make Sasuke-kun late. Hearing this, Ino and the other genin grew a little concerned as well. While they weren't as equally concerned as the two girls, none of them wanted to see a comrade be punished for someone else's actions. The jonin, on the other hand, were not surprised to hear this. Having worked with Kakashi before, they knew of his tardy habits and were hoping he would not make one of his students late, as well not miss his other students' match. Down in the arena were the remaining participants, among them was Naruto. All of the remaining participants were standing in a line with the proctor of this portion of the exam, Genma Shiranui, standing in front of them with everyone facing the cage box. He has shoulder-length brown hair tied out of his eyes by his bandana-style hitai, which was reversed for the knot to be on his forehead. He wore the standard jonin outfit made up of dark blue turtleneck with matching pants. On the shoulders of his shirt were the red spirals of the Uzumaki clan. He had bandages wrapped around his ankles and lower shin, as well as the green flak jacket of his rank. Genma carried a senbon in his mouth with a utility pouch on the back right of his hip with a shuriken holster on his right leg. Though Naruto should have been facing forward, he was discreetly looking around trying to see if he could spot Sasuke, Kakashi, Tsunade, or Shizune. He would use his sensory ability, however it required him to close his eyes. If he looked like he was sleeping during such an important event, it could get him in trouble with the exam board, then he wouldn't make Chunin and he would let down Su-chan and Shizune. Anime and manga. What he didn't know was in the stands were the very individuals he was looking for, though they were under a henge. Tsunade wore the henge she used when she and Naruto went on together for his rest day. Shizune had changed to look like a brown-haired woman with narrow eyes, and Tonton was hanged to look like a black pig versus her normal pink self. They were looking down in the arena, their eyes on the young blonde. He seems to be searching for someone, commented a nearly giggling Shizune while holding a smiling Tonton. Tsunade, with a light dusting of pink on her cheeks, said, he shouldn't be worried about that. He should be focused on the upcoming match. Oh but, Mito-san, he has a great bit of care for the person he is searching for. Maybe he wants them to see his win with all the training he has gone through, teased a giggling Shizune. It also didn't help that they had one more rest day they shared together before the finals, something Shizune was happy for as Tsunade was smiling more happily than when she was about to gamble at a new casino. By this point, Mito's eyebrow was twitching. Ever since she gave Naruto that kiss on his cheek, Kato had been going on and on about how much happier she was and how much more lively she had been acting. Not being able to take it, Mito pulled out a container of sake to ignore her friend's taunting. Mito-san, you are drinking again. Shut up. This is happy drinking, not depressed drinking, she claimed, trying to justify picking up the bottle once again. While not entirely wrong, she was drinking again as a result of the joy she felt with being around Naruto. In fact, the last night before the finals, Tsunade had gotten drunk and became a lot more clingy to the younger blonde to the point she walked with him around their room like she was a little girl holding her teddy bear by the waist. Right now, however, she just wanted to not be teased for attempting to surprise Naruto here with her presence in the stands of the arena. It would be another 5 minutes before the Hokage would make his announcement. Well then, we ought to begin, stated Hiruzen. Standing from his seat, Hiruzen made his way to the balcony of the cage booth to address the crowd. Clearing his throat, he began his speech. Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed guests, welcome and heartfelt thanks to you all for gathering here in Konohagakure for the Chunin selection exams. We will now begin the matches of the final event between the 8 candidates WHO advanced in the preliminaries. Please sit back and enjoy. The crowd erupted into thunderous cheers and applause as the Hokage returned to his seat. Once he took his seat, the cage asked, 8 candidates. You seem to be missing one. Hiruzen chose not to answer the other cage, instead focusing on the arena. With the announcement concluded, Genma turned to address the participants. Alright, there have been some minor changes, so listen up. Genma brought out a piece of paper from his equipment pouch. I am showing you the matches once more so there is no confusion on who your opponent is. To the surprise of everyone, though few showed it, the brackets had a minor change. I was down for an extra match. Did that Dosu guy withdraw? Questioned Shikamaru. Worried for his teammate, Naruto decided to ask a question. Raising his hand, he asked the proctor, Hey, Sasuke's not here yet, so what's gonna happen? As he put the paper away, Genma answered him. If he doesn't arrive on time by the start of his match, he'll lose by forfeit. The answer shocked Naruto. Now he was really hoping that his teammate got to the arena and quickly. Alright, can Naruto Uzumaki and Neji Hyuga remain for the first match while the rest of you go to the participants' box, ordered Genma. Neji was a fair-skinned boy who was a year older than Naruto. He has long black hair tied into a low ponytail. He was wearing a beige-colored shirt, layered over a dull blue shirt and mesh armor. He was wearing dark brown shorts with blue shinobi sandals. He had bandages wrapped around his right arm, leg, and head. His hitai was on a black cloth that had 2 straps that framed his face. His most standout feature was Byakugan, which are pupilless white eyes. When the rest of the contestants left, Neji began to taunt Naruto. With an arrogant smirk, Neji asked, You got something to say? With determination ruling his features, Naruto responded. I've said this once before. He raised his fist, like how he did when he swore on Hinata's blood. I vow to win. Neji scoffed at Naruto's declaration. Ho, good. It's more fun that you didn't surrender. I can't wait to see the despair in your eyes when the truth of fate finally dawns on you. At this, Naruto's anger rose. If you're so confident in that, then I have a bet for you. This intrigued Neji and Genma. Motioning with his hand, Neji urged him to continue. If you're so confident, then I bet I can beat you in one punch. If you can take it, then you can hit me. I won't block it or dodge. So, what do you say? Back in the stands, Hiashi Hyuga, uncle to Neji and father of Hinata and Hanabi, addressed his youngest. Watch closely, Hanabi. The Hyuga blood flows thicker in his veins than anyone else's. Anime and manga. Yes, father. Hiyashi has tan skin along with long black hair that falls to his upper back with the white pupilless eyes of the Byakugan. He was wearing traditional, loose-fitting robes with a long-sleeved, brown haori. Hanabi is a young girl with the same skin tone as her father. She too has long brown hair that reaches her mid-back with long parted bangs complemented by a single lock that fall into her face. She was wearing a sleeveless blue V-neck shirt with mesh armor underneath with blue capri pants and brown sandals. She also has the white pupilless eyes of the Byakugan. During the banter between the two fighters, Neji's remaining teammate and sensei, Might Guy, arrived at the stands. The two managed to hear Neji's taunt and the bet put forward by Naruto. Guy frowned at his student's attitude. Neji, have I failed you to so much that you can't see anyone's hard work? Questioned Guy. Do not worry, Guy-sensei, Lee said, getting his mentor's attention and by extension the other genin and jonin. I think Naruto can open Neji's eyes and show him that things are not set in stone, stated a confident Lee. The others turned to see who was talking. Seeing their remaining friend, Lee, Guy-sensei, stated an excited Sakura. Lee was a fair-skinned boy, the same age as Neji, with shiny black hair cut into a bowl cut. He has rounded eyes with very thick eyebrows. Lee traded out his usual green spandex for a blue kimono top that has a white collar and blue sweats. His arms were bandaged while a brace was behind his leg to allow it to support his weight while holding a single crutch in his right hand. Sadly, due to his injuries from facing Gaara, he was forced to stand as he watched the matches. Might Guy, Lee and Neji's Jonin sensei, is a tall, well-toned man with a strong jawline and pronounced cheekbones. His shiny black hair was also styled into a bowl cut while having thicker eyebrows than Lee. Instead of the usual dark blue turtleneck and pants that a Jonin or Chunin of Konoha would wear, he wore a green jumpsuit complemented by orange stripped leg warmers. He also wore the green Konoha flak jacket. His Hitai was attached to red fabric which he wore as a belt. All attention was brought back to the arena, when they all heard Genma speak, "Let the first match of the Chunin selection exams begin." He shouted as he brought his hand down. Well, said Neji after a while of nothing happening. I'm waiting. Naruto merely gave a confident smile in response. Sorry. I just wanted to let you keep breathing so when I hit you, you remember what stable breathing feels like. Neji scowled at this proclamation. You could never do such harm to me. Fate has decided it, taunted Neji. Get on with it so I may show you what your place is. With a shrug, Naruto walked forward. Almost immediately the Jonin became anxious. They were nervous at what Naruto had planned due to how subdued his pace was and relaxed he seemed. As Naruto got closer, the Jonin got even more on edge, especially Guy and Hiyashi. The rest of the audience held their breath, curious about the outcome of this bet would be. As Naruto got closer, he was slowly pushing chakra to his right fist like Tsunade taught him. It was building to a point where it would feel like Neji would be struck by the beautiful blonde herself when she sent that white-haired man to the sky. He was now close enough to strike Neji with his arm fully extended, but Naruto wanted to be closer. He wanted to use a move that Shizune had taught him between lessons. Naruto slowly brought his fist up to strike. The move involved keeping one's muscles loose until they were needed to strike, where the person would tighten them to their max, increasing one's striking power. When he reached his target distance, Naruto brought his right arm up with his fist clenched but loose. Neji still wore his arrogant smirk, believing he could not be harmed by whatever trick the failure before him was going to employ. As Naruto sent his fist forward, the Jonin and Kage in the arena sensed the danger that his attack posed to the arrogant Hyuga. With speed befitting their station as Jonin, Guy, Asuma, Kurenai, Genma, Hiyashi and Ensui Nara sprang into action. Genma carried Neji out of the path of the strike, Asuma, in a shoulder tackle position, was rammed into Naruto with his shoulder buried in the blonde's diaphragm while Kurenai was on his back with her right index and middle fingers pointed outward making contact with Naruto's forehead and her left in a half-ram seal. Guy wrapped his arms around Naruto's left shoulder and his chest. Ensui, while at a good distance, used his clan's Kajimane no Jutsu to further restrain Naruto's movements. Hiashi had grabbed onto Naruto's right wrist with his left hand and using his masterful chakra control, brought Naruto's chakra through his own chakra network before stretching out his right index and middle fingers out, in a position reminiscent of a forward lunge, and discharging the channeled chakra into the air, inadvertently forming a pressurized projectile that nearly destroyed the wall he was pointing at. Hiashi would not show or admit it, but he was in intense pain as his chakra coils were stretched and strained to funnel the chakra Naruto had channeled into his fist through his own coils to render the attack inert. The action he performed was to take another person's chakra, channel it into their own coils using their own chakra as a means to guide the foreign chakra, then discharge it through a different tenketsu. This is a technique that only the most skilled of the Hyuga could use, as any mistake could permanently scar the Hyuga's chakra network. Or if channeling as much chakra as Naruto put into his attack, could rupture their chakra coils. Most of the audience was left stunned by this outcome as well as Neji himself, save two and a piglet. Naruto on the other hand had the biggest smile ever seen in Konoha. The Jonin restraining him were all glaring daggers at the bound blonde. That was rather dangerous, Gaki, chastised Asuma. I would prefer it if you didn't, my student Naruto-san, stated Guy. Naruto used his eyes to look the Jonin he could see, taking in their heated expressions, smiling all the while he was restrained. As if what they were doing was of no concern to him. Just then, a woman with red hair and the largest bust many of the men had ever seen dropped into the arena. Hey Naruto-kun, that was an impressive match. Hearing who it was that called out to him, Naruto further surprised the Jonin. The next thing any of them knew, they were no longer holding him. Instead, he was happily jogging over to the mysterious redhead. Su-chan, he proclaimed excitedly, jumped into her arms where he was wrapped up in a hug. Nay Su-chan, did you see? I won. Yes I did Naru. That was amazing. Naruto gave a wide smile to the woman. Sakura and the other genin were in shock. Not only did the Jonin interfere in the match by holding Naruto back from striking Neji, but the proctor moved Neji out of the direct path of Naruto's strike. Anime and manga. Now Naruto was hugging some redhead in the center of the arena. Who is that? Asked a surprised Sakura. I don't know. I've never seen her before, but whoever she is, she certainly is beautiful, replied Ino. Hinata was in shock. Naruto was hugging an older woman affectionately. For all the times she has followed him around, she had never seen him associate with such a person. Hiruzen was also shocked. Not only had Naruto won due to Genma and the other Jonins interfering, but he was also hugging a woman he doesn't recall him interacting with or mentioning before. This disturbed him. He needed to find out who she was immediately after the tournament concluded. Nay, let's go Su-chan, I wanna see the other matches, said an excited Naruto as he began to pull Tsunade along, who just went with it as she smiled down at him. Gaara is a fair-skinned boy with green eyes surrounded by thick black rings, which many believe to be a symptom of insomnia. He has spiky, short auburn hair that is parted to the right with a tattoo for the kanji of love on the left side of his forehead. He was wearing a black bodysuit with a low-cut neckline, and short sleeves and full-length legs. He has wrappings around his ankles and lower shins. From his sleeves appear to be mesh sleeves that extend almost to his elbows. He wore a white cloth over his right shoulder to the left side of his hips, accompanied by a wide leather band from his left shoulder to his right hip, which he uses to carry his sand gordon around. He has his Hitai-8 wrapped around the lower side of the leather band and black shinobi sandals with a piece that goes between his big and index toes, a staple of Suna shinobi. Once the announcement was over, Naruto had to ask, "Nay, Mito-chan, Kato-chan, did you enjoy my match?" asked an excited Naruto. Before Tsunade could answer, Shizune answered first. We sure did, Naru-chan. In fact, Mito-chan, here made quite the sizable amount of money from your win, giggled Shizune. Naruto attempted to turn around and face Tsunade, however he was unable to as she buried herself in his hair to hide her embarrassment. Mito-chan, you bet on me? Asked a surprised Naruto. Tsunade chose not to answer, instead nodding her head in his hair. Naruto was happy and showed it by hugging Tsunade's arms. Thanks, Mito-chan. I am happy that you have so much confidence in me. That sentence caused Tsunade to snap her head up. Of course I have confidence in you. Remember what I told you when I gave you that necklace. Naruto thought back to words Tsunade told him when he got the Shodai's necklace. Remember this, Naruto, I am trusting you with this. I believe in you. You are a fine man. I'm sure you will be a great Hokage too. With those words, Naruto leaned back into Tsunade, who took a quick swig of sake before resting her chin on Naruto's head to watch the remaining matches. The rookies all were looking for Naruto. They were unsure where he was sitting after he left the arena with that red-headed woman. Neji had also joined the genin. After his loss against Naruto, he was seething. He couldn't understand how he had lost to a nobody like Naruto, so everyone decided to give him space to cool down. Sakura's attention was pulled in two different directions. She was looking around the stadium, from her seat, for Naruto and looking down to the arena for Sasuke's arrival. As the seconds ticked by, her nervousness grew while the audience was going from excited to see the next match to getting annoyed with the delay. It wasn't long before the crowd started voicing this opinion of the delay, rather heatedly. Hiruzen let out a sigh. It would seem he would need to disqualify Sasuke for his tardiness and reprimand Kakashi for allowing him to be late for such an event. Ho ho, the crowd is astir, commented the Cage. Yes, the previous match had an interesting outcome, replied the Hokage. Here the Cage rebuked the professor's claim. No, I believe their excitement more for anticipation of the next match. For all of the curious shinobi, daimyo and wealthy individuals, no other match today has more eagerness for it. A majority of the shinobi, daimyo, and wealthy individuals here, including myself, have come here almost solely to observe this match. Hiruzen gave the Cage's words some thought. On one hand, he was correct. Many people, including high-ranking individuals, had appeared to watch the last Uchiha fight in this tournament. On the other hand, it would also send a message that one was allowed special treatment if their name was big enough. It could also reflect poorly for all his shinobi. As the saying goes, it only takes one to ruin it for everyone. Needing an answer to tell Genma on how to proceed, the Hokage's guard leaned into Hiruzen's ear to ask. Hokage-sama, what should we do? Do I tell Genma to disqualify the Uchiha? Letting out a sigh, Hiruzen caved to the Cage's hidden suggestion. Postpone Sasuke's match. Have his match be the final one of the round. Accepting the decision, though with disdain for the favoritism of the Uchiha, the Hokage's guard shunshined into the arena to let Genma know of the Hokage's decision. Everyone. Due to one of the contenders of this match having not arrived yet, this match will be postponed and we will proceed with the next scheduled match. Proclaimed Genma. In the stands, Tsunade frowned at the decision. It was disgraceful for a shinobi to be late when they are on a time-sensitive mission unless they are held up for valid reasons. This is not an instance where that excuse should fly. The boy had over a month to be ready for this event and he is late. He even had the time of Naruto-kun's match to arrive and he still is not here. Tsunade's temper began to flare. If any other participant was late, what would be the odds that their match would be pushed back to allow them to participate? Anime and manga. Naruto felt a pressure build up in his abdominal region. It was soon followed by the feeling of Tsunade's jaw tightening, which he felt on the top of his head. Nervously, Naruto tried to get Tsunade's attention. Mito-chan, I think you are squeezing a little tight. This snapped Tsunade back to the arena, where she loosened her hold on Naruto. Sorry about that, Naruto-kun. It's okay, Mito-chan. If you don't mind, can I ask what made you do that? Naruto nodded in agreement. Yeah, I know what you mean, he said with a huff and crossing his arms. It's totally unfair that Sasuke gets his match moved back while everyone else has to be here on time. Honestly, it reminds me of how Kakashi-sensei always shows up late, even when he sets the time. Shizune and Taunton agreed with the two, with Taunton giving an oink at Naruto's statement. As Gaara made his way from the arena to the competitor's box, Shizu spoke. Mito-san, I think Naruto should get back to the competitor's box. We wouldn't want him to get in trouble if they have added such a rule, right? With a nod from both parties, Tsunade let Naruto off of her lap. Getting a hug from Tsunade, a high five from Shizune, and a fist bump from Taunton, Naruto raced off to the competitor's box via the quickest route, across the arena wall while no match was underway. Naruto made it to the competitor's box just in time as Genma called for the next participants. Will Kankuro of Suna and Shino Aburame please come down? Shino is a tall boy who is fair-skinned with dark, bushy hair. He wears rounded sunglasses, like the rest of his clan, a high-collar sea-green jacket that covers the lower half of his face. He wears brown pants that stop halfway down his shins where his shuriken holster can be seen on his right leg while his utility pouch is in center of his hip. He wears blue shinobi sandals while his hitai is secured on his forehead. Meanwhile, Kankuro was fair-skinned boy about the same height as Shino. He wore a bunraku, all-black puppeteer costume that was designed to be baggy rather than skin-tight like the outfit is traditionally. His suit has a circle divided in half by an almost purple like red and yellow. His hitai is secured as part of his cowl that had two protrusions that look like cat ears. He has purple face paint drawn with triangular shapes in mind as well as a wrapped bundle as tall as he is that hold his puppet Karasu. Kankuro appeared to be nervous about something. As Shino was about to descend into the arena, something unexpected happened. Proctor, I withdraw. The announcement was met with surprise and boos from the audience. Of the 3 matches that were supposed to have taken place by this point, only one has had both combatants willing to fight. Shino was shocked as well. What were his thoughts at his opponent's announcement? Hey, you mean my match has been moved up? Shouted a panicking Shikamaru. Anime and manga. Not seeing anything else to be done, Genma let out a sigh before preparing to call for the next set of combatants, Shikamaru Nara and Tamari of Suna. Shikamaru is a lightly tanned boy, having narrow brown eyes with an expression that suggests he is constantly bored. His shoulder-length black hair was tied into a spiked-up ponytail. He was wearing a gray, short-sleeved, mid-riff jacket with green-edged sleeves and the Nara clan symbol on the back. He was also wearing a green-lined mesh armor short-sleeved shirt, brown pants that falls midway down his shins while he wears a shuriken holster on his right leg and a utility pouch on his back right hip. He has small, silver hoop earrings and blue shinobi sandals. Tamari, a growing beauty from Sunagakur who has teal eyes, like her Otudo Gaara, and sandy blonde hair gathered into 4 pigtails. She was wearing an off-shoulder, light purple one-piece dress with long sleeves that are rolled up at her forearms while the skirt falls to just above her knees. She wore a scarlet-red sash around her waist with the ends falling to the bottom of her dress. She also had a fishnet top, with fishnets around her right calf and left thigh and black Suna shinobi sandals. Instead of the usual shinobi tools, Tamari carries a large war fan that is as tall as she is. The paper of the fan is tan on the top half with 3 purple moons evenly spaced along the paper while bottom half being black. He wears black, Suna-styled shinobi sandals while having a shuriken holster on his right leg. Tamari, with a sneer on her face, grabbed her fan. Unfurling it, she created a large draft of wind. She jumped atop her battle fan and rode the wind currents to the arena floor. Well, at least you seem willing to fight. Hey, final candidate, get down here. Commented Genma. Hey, what's the rush? Hold horses, why am I always getting shafted in the math schedule, huh? Darn it, I should just withdraw too. So lost in his dilemma, Shikamaru missed Naruto coming up behind him. All right, go get him, Shikamaru. Naruto shouted as he pushed Shikamaru into the arena. Temari watched Shikamaru land unceremoniously with a wince and a glare. As the dust settled, Shikamaru gave no hint that he planned on moving from his current position, his back on the ground and his feet in the air. Getting tired of just watching him lay on the ground, Temari rushed forward to bash his head in with her large fan. Hey, wait, I haven't started the match. I don't care. With a war cry, Temari brought her fan down on top of the lazy Nara, kicking up a cloud of smoke. When the dust cleared, it showed Shikamaru had moved to somewhere in the arena. As Temari let loose a whirlwind of wind blades throughout the arena, Shikamaru was forced to brace himself behind the tree he hid behind. Damn it. She's a stronger long-range fighter. I have to distract her somehow to stop her assault. As the wind from her first strike died down, Shikamaru took a chance and peeked out to see what she was doing. This turned out to be a bad idea, as the moment she caught a glimpse of him she let loose another storm of wind. There was a problem, however. As she knew where to concentrate her blast, the more focused windstorm tore apart Shikamaru's only cover. The remaining wind blades tore into the young Nara, causing scratches and lacerations before a follow-up strike lifted him into the air to face a repeat performance of what Neji's teammate, Tenten, faced when she fought against Temari. Shikamaru fell to the ground unceremoniously and in a lot of pain. He was not driven into unconsciousness, but he was not inclined to move anytime soon. Temari gave a smirk as she beat the boy she believed wasn't taking the match seriously. HMPH. Maybe next time you will take your match seriously, she scolded. Genma returned to the center of the arena. Winner of the fourth match. Temari of Suna, Genma declared. Many of the civilians applauded the match. They were greatly impressed by the display of jutsu thrown around by the young woman from Suna. The shinobi on the other hand were disappointed. The young Nara barely put up a fight while the girl from Suna appeared to be a one-trick pony. While an effective trick in a controlled environment such as this, out in the field it could be fail if matched against someone with an effective counter. Ino looked saddened for her teammate's loss. Aw man, I can't believe Shikamaru lost. Her other teammate, Choji Akamaiki, was eating chips with a solemn look on his face. Choji is a rotund boy with swirl marks on his cheeks. He has spiky, light brown hair. He was wearing a light green shirt with the kanji for food on it. Over this was a green, short-sleeved haori while a long white scarf was tied around his neck having the excess fall over his stomach. He was wearing the same hoop earrings as Shikamaru, dark brown pants, while having his hands, forearms, and shins wrapped in bandages with blue shinobi sandals. Yeah, that looked rather brutal. We shouldn't be surprised by that though. I mean, you remember what she did to that Tenten girl? Asked Choji. Ino thought back to Temari's preliminary match and how she seemed to take pleasure in giving Tenten the run around of her abilities before quickly ending the match. Anime and manga. The senseis of Team 10 and 8, Asuma Sarutobi and Kurenai Yuhi, had their own thoughts on the match. Asuma is a tall man, with olive skin, brown eyes, and short spiky hair that was connected to his chin-strap beard. He wore the standard Konoha Jonin and Chunin uniform with his sleeves rolled part way up his forearms complementing the wrappings wrapped his biceps. On each of his wrists was a black, loose-fitting wristband. He wore his shuriken holster on his left leg with his utility pouch on the back of his right hip while his hitai was wrapped around his forehead. He also has a unique sash that has the kanji for fire on it. Kurenai was a beautiful, fair-skinned woman with a slender build. She has long, untamed black hair with red eyes that have a ring in them. She wears red lipstick and purple eyeshadow. She wears her hitai around her forehead and black shinobi sandals. Her usual outfit is made up of broad material, resembling bandages with a pattern similar to rose thorns running along it. She has a long, loose-fitting right sleeve while her left was bare. She has a mesh armor shirt underneath while wearing bandages that cover her hands and forearms as well as using them as shorts. I should have pushed him more instead of letting him dictate his own schedule, relented Asuma while taking a long drag on his cigarette. Kurenai turned her attention to her comrade. You wanted him to take responsibility for his own training like a Chunin would. Asuma let out a long sigh. Yes, but it seems the Nara laziness is strong with him. I guess I need to be more proactive in pushing him if I want him to survive the shinobi life beyond this point. If this was out in the field, he would have either succeeded or been brought down because he has no other means of combating an opponent aside from the basics and the Kagame no Jutsu. Kurenai thought back to her own team with that statement. She too gave her team no other means of combating foes aside from what they learned from their clans. While they were good trackers, they all had ways to go as fighters and information gatherers. We all seem to have things to work on with our students. Some of us, however, have to work on our own habits. Her remark was aimed towards Kakashi missing one of his students' matches and having his other be tardy for his match. Back in the contestants' box, Konkuro had some comments of his own. TCH, how weak are you, Konoha Shinobi? I mean, a Konoha Shinobi has lost almost every round, he said with a smirk. Naruto turned quickly towards the Suna Shinobi. Hey, watch your mouth. You surrendered the first chance you got. So I don't want to hear anything out of you. HMPH, was Konkuro's retort as he crossed his arms. That doesn't mean anything. I won if I'd have fought. At this comment, Shino decided to speak up. That is a bold claim. Why? You seem to be overconfident in your puppet's abilities. Your Otudo and An may be strong, but you seem to be the most limited in terms of tricks and combative prowess. Your An seems to capable of using her fan in taijutsu, while you seem to be unable to say the same. Before their argument could get any more heated, Genma's announcement rang out. Genma let out a sigh. It seems that these matches are going to be rather short for such an event. He let 5 more minutes pass to allow people to collect their winnings before calling the next match. Will Sasuke Uchiha and Gaara of Suna please come down? The crowd's excitement for the match of the last Uchiha now rang throughout the stadium. Many a gambler placed large bets on this match, with some changing their bets due to the Uchiha's no-show when he was originally set to fight. As the crowd's anticipation grew, so too did their impatience. Most of the fights they have seen have been very one-sided, so they were hoping that this one would be different. However, that was predicated on Sasuke arriving, which he has still yet to do. The Hokage's guard bent down to whisper into his ear, Hokage-sama, Sasuke Uchiha has yet to arrive. What should we do? Hiruzen let out a sigh. It seems to be unavoidable. We cannot make our guests wait any longer. At this, the Kazekage chose to speak up. 10 more minutes. We should give Sasuke Uchiha another 10 minutes. We have waited this long, surely we can wait a couple more. Hiruzen would like to see Sasuke fight as well, however his response was one a competent leader would give. We cannot allow such behavior to be rewarded. We have already given the boy a concession of pushing his match to the end of the round and he still has not arrived. It is not fair to our audience and the other competitors that such accommodations were made in the first place. To grant any more would show a level of favoritism that no cage should show, no matter their name. No, Sasuke Uchiha is to be disqualified. With a nod of his head, the Hokage's guard shunshine down to the arena to let Genma know of the Hokage's decision. Upon receiving his order, Genma made the announcement. Due to failing to arrive, Sasuke Uchiha is disqualified. The announcement was met with boos and jeers from many of the crowd. Sakura and Ino were downcast. They were greatly saddened by Sasuke's disqualification, though Sakura had to admit she was somewhat happy that Sasuke would be safe from Gaara, but now Naruto was in the firing line. Aw man, I can't believe that Sasuke-kun got disqualified, whined Ino. A storm cloud had formed over Sakura as she held her knees close to her chest. This exam has been a roller coaster. First Naruto meets some red-headed woman and now Sasuke has been disqualified. The Jonin on the other hand let out a collective sigh. I can't believe Kakashi got one of his students disqualified, stated Asuma. It appears that Kakashi's past has affected him more than I thought, whispered Guy. Gaara was greatly disappointed. He was looking forward to taking Sasuke's blood and giving to his mother. Anger marred his features as he was not allowed to collect worthy blood. As the fighters made their way down, Naruto over the side and Gaara by stairs, people scrambled to place their bets. One red-headed woman had an easier time placing her bet. She seemed to be able to move fully grown adults with ease to the point where she got to the front of the line in seconds. She slammed her money down on the counter, 50 million ryo on Naruto. The man at the counter was surprised by her bet, but then again, she made a similar bet for the boys' first match and won back almost triple her money. Maybe she would get lucky again. With a nod of his head, he left to print her ticket. While he was gone, some people were talking poorly about the blonde. Come on, that much on that boy. He probably just got lucky during his fight with the Hyuga. The redhead turned on those speaking with a fire in her eyes. Luck had nothing to do with it. That boy is strong, that is why all those Jonin were forced to interfere. You'll see it again in this round, she stated confidently. Before the men could retort, she was presented her ticket. As she made her way back to her seat, she gave the men a light shove resulting in them being rocketed into the wall. People immediately got out of the way of the scary woman as she walked past. She arrived back to her seat as Gaara took his place across from Naruto. In the arena, Naruto was remembering his lessons from Shizune-san and Su-chan. Remember Naruto, in a fight against an opponent of equal or greater strength, it is important to end the fight quickly. Especially if you have a skill that is a direct counter to theirs. Why? Most times if someone is stronger than their opponent, they will underestimate them and not take them seriously. Use that to your advantage and end it fast before they realize how much of a threat you are. This plays into your medical training. Here Naruto seemed to think. It's because as a medic, I will need to attend to the squad as quickly as possible when the danger is either being taken care of or has passed. Tsunade gave a nod of approval. Yes. As a medic, your first duty is to your personal safety to make sure that your squad can be cared for, and in the event a member of your team is injured, it is your job to make sure they are not in danger from their wounds. Naruto nodded in understanding as their taijutsu lessons resumed. From the rings around his eyes and the control over sand, he must be the container for Shukaku, thought Naruto. Here, his lessons with Shizune came to the forefront when she talked about the Biju. Now Naruto-kun, we will be talking about the Biju, like the Kyuubi. Here one of the Naruto Bunshins raised their hand. Shizune-san, are you saying there are more than the Kyuubi? Shizune answered his question with a smile and a nod. There are in fact 9, and their hosts, like you. Here she pointed at each of the Bunshins, and they are called Jinchuriki. Some of the Bunshins gestured to where their seal was. Each of these creatures are known as Biju, and they all reside in the major villages while one is in a minor village. Now Tsunade holds the Aikibi no Shukaku. Its abilities revolve around the manipulation of sand to such a degree that even individual grains can be manipulated to act as weapons. Its hosts are often known to have dark rings that encircle their eyes. It is speculated that this is either a trait of being its host, as the Biju are known to provide their hosts with attributes of the animals they are, or due to a lack of sleep, as Tsunade has very few who are knowledgeable in Fuinjutsu. This has led to the hosts being unable to sleep, as their relaxed will allows the Biju to manifest itself and go on a rampage. Gaara has the signs that Shizune-san had gone over. Does that mean he is like me? Questioned Naruto. His mood seemed to be telegraphed on his face as Gaara had asked, what troubles you, Uzumaki? Don't let that hold you back. Your blood will be used to make up for what I could not get from Sasuke Uchiha. If he arrives, I will feed his blood to Mother. Genma immediately went on guard from what the boy just said, as well as the crazed look that took over in the boy's eyes. Naruto scowled at this. Oh yeah. Well, bring it on, replied Naruto. I won't let you hurt my friends. And if you think you can, I'll pound you into the dirt. Even if we are the same, I won't let you hurt those precious to me. thought Naruto. As the banter died down, Genma looked at the two genin to make sure the pre-fight banter has concluded. Seeing that it was he raised his hand, the battle between Naruto Uzumaki and Gaara of Suna will now begin. He shouted as he brought his hand down and jumping back. The match started really slow, with the only thing of note happening was Gaara slowly letting his sand out of his gourd and onto the arena floor. What many didn't notice aside from the Jonin and cage, was what Naruto was doing. From what they were seeing, some kind of chains were going into the ground, however with no damage to the ground where they entered. It was difficult to say if what they were seeing was a genjutsu. Is that a genjutsu? Questioned Kurenai. Asuma shrugged, I'm not sure. His file never mentioned any proficiency with the art, however things can change depending on how he was trained. Kurenai seemed to agree with this, as it wasn't unheard of shinobi to learn skills they never showed talent in previously, like Lee and Guy. Both weren't the greatest in taijutsu when they started the academy, but with the hard work they put into their training, they grew to being some of the strongest in the field. But the question becomes who would have trained him. To both Jonin that was indeed the question. In the cage box, both were surprised. When did he manifest those chains? Questioned the Sandame. The boy has those cursed chains. If they make contact with the Ikibi container, my plans will be in ruin. Panicked the cage. Gaara and the rest of the audience were getting impatient. Gaara was often the one who was attacked first and was not used to waiting. Normally his foe would have struck out at him by this point, so why wasn't Uzumaki? Was he scared of him? Was Gaara intimidating to the blonde? No matter the reason, Gaara's, and by extension Shukaku's, patience was waning. Well, Uzumaki, are you scared? Fight me. Make me feel alive. Raged an ever-growing psychotic Gaara. Oi, shut up. I'll beat you, you'll see. Shouted the blonde as he pointed at the psychotic redhead. At this Gaara grew a manic grin. Does that mean you are done stalling? Anime and manga. Here Naruto smiled confidently. I wasn't stalling. Gaara was lost. If Uzumaki wasn't stalling, what was he doing? Suddenly, 6 gold glowing chains with spear tips as the leading link sprang from the ground around Gaara and rocketed toward him. Gaara's sand attempted to intercept them, however as soon as the sand made contact it fell lifelessly to the ground. Too stunned to move, the chains wrapped themselves around Gaara, causing all of his sand to become inert. Most were left stunned to silence save 2 and a piglet. Once again, Mito and Kato were cheering loudly for the blonde in the arena. The Jonin sensei and the rookies that all went to the academy with Naruto were shocked to silence, as were Lee and his teammates. Lee was hurt by the display as feelings of inadequacy plagued his mind as he watched the foe he struggled to defeat wrapped up and subdued too easily. Sensing his student's plight, Guy put a reassuring hand on Lee's shoulder. When Lee turned back to Guy, he met a bright shining smile. Don't worry Lee, as soon as you're healed we will work 5 times as hard so you can take on Gaara again and beat him. All you have seen here today was just another way someone could achieve the same goal. Don't let this get you down. Cheered Guy. While tears brimmed at the corners of Lee's eyes, he nodded in agreement of his sensei's words. Asuma and Kurenai had no words. Here was the worst student of their genin's graduating class defeating 2 individuals that were thought to be the favorite of the tournament. The rookies were no better. What the hell is that? Questioned Ino. No one had an answer. Scratch that, when did Naruto get something like that? She continued on. Again, no answer. None of her peers had an answer and the Jonin seemed to be shocked by the outcome of the fight to comment. Everyone was snapped out of their shock when they heard the redhead from earlier cheering. Woohoo! Good job Naru-chan. See, I told you he could do it. She shouted to a stunned stadium. In the arena, Gaara was going nuts while being bound. He was struggling against his bindings while calling out for his mother. Mother, 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 where are you? Why can't I hear her? Uzumaki, what have you done? Questioned the raving Gaara. His mad ravings immediately got the attention of the Jonin and Hokage. The Jonin were curious what the abilities of the chains were if they caused Gaara to go mad, while Hiruzen immediately went on guard as this boy was exhibiting traits of a person with psychosis. These were not traits any cage would want in a shinobi unless they were powerful, like a Jinchuriki. Genma was also extremely on guard. Where a normal individual would either submit to the bindings if they can't escape or wait patiently for them to be dropped, this boy was thrashing about as if his mind was in jeopardy. Temari and Kankuro were scared. They knew from his ravings that Gaara was cut off from the Ikibi, as they learned that he often referred to the beast as mother when he slew people back in Suna. As Gaara's ravings continued, a swirl of leaves began to appear in the arena. When it died down, it revealed Kakashi and Sasuke. Kakashi is a lean man of average height with spiky silver hair that leans to his left side. He has a single visible black eye while taking a relaxed or lazy posture. His left eye was covered by his Hittite while the bottom of his face was covered by mask that seemed to be part of his attire. He was wearing the standard Konoha Jonin attire in addition to fingerless gloves with metal plates on the back of the hands as well as blue shinobi sandals. He wore his shuriken holster on his right leg while his utility pouch was carried on the back of his right hip. Sasuke is the final genin on Sakura's team. He was a fair-skinned boy with flat, spiky black hair with two chin-length bangs. He wore a high-collar black bodysuit that had short sleeves and pant legs. He had an elbow pad on each arm while he had his shins, ankles and left arm wrapped with many small belts over the bandages. He had his Hittite wrapped around his forehead while his shuriken holster attached around his right leg while his utility pouch on the back of the left side of his hip, as well as black shinobi sandals. Sorry, you wouldn't believe. Kakashi was cut off by Gaara's ravings. Kakashi and Sasuke were greatly confused to see a wrapped-up Gaara going mad as he struggled against his bindings while standing across from Naruto. Needlessly to say, the two were surprised. Naruto beat Neji? Questioned Kakashi. Just what did Ebisu teach him? Sasuke on the other hand was more surprised to find Naruto facing off against Gaara. That was his match, so how was he not fighting him? Su, what did we miss? Asked Kakashi. Genma looked to Kakashi with a blank look, doing his best to tune out the now whimpering Gaara. Well, you missed your student here beating Neji by technical knockout. The puppeteer forfeited, the wind user won, and due to your tardiness, Sasuke's match was pushed to the end of the round, then he was forced to concede because, again you were tardy, replied Genma. Sasuke and Kakashi were shocked. How fast were the matches if he was so late that they didn't even make the reschedule? Then there were the chains. Did Naruto have the same Kekkei Genkai as Kushina-sama? If he did, how did no one know? Sasuke on the other hand was seething. But he wasn't mad at Naruto. How could he be? Naruto was following the rules put forth by the exams. No, he was mad at Kakashi. His Jonin sensei wanted him to make some kind of big entrance by arriving in a shunshin to impress the audience, but no. He lost his right to fight all because his sensei wanted to show off. Genma lined up with Kakashi to stare down the Suna trio and Oto Shinobi. Before anyone could question what was going on, the Jonin sensei of the Suna team attempted to make a move for Gaara. Reacting quickly, Kakashi threw several kunai at the Jonin to halt his approach. Naruto, use your chains to bring Gaara over to us. Keep him away from them. Right. Following his sensei's orders, Naruto dragged Gaara to the Konoha group. At this, Kankuro brought out what was wrapped within his bundle, revealing a 6-arm, 3-eyed humanoid puppet with long shaggy black hair and exposed teeth. Kankuro sent his puppet to retrieve his Otudo. This time Sasuke acted. Despite not understanding what was happening, Kakashi made it clear that they needed to keep Gaara away from Suna Shinobi in front of them. To counter the puppet's charge, Sasuke unleashed a Gokaku with the intention of incinerating the doll. The Suna trio and Oto Shinobi scattered, as even though the puppet dodged the attack they were still in its path. The enemy shinobi moved to surround the Konoha group, though their journey did not go unimpeded. Sasuke chased down Temari. From what he remembered of the Suna Kunoichi, She is a futon user, meaning his cadence should be the perfect counter to her. The only thing he had to overcome is the distance between the two. Kankuro moved to face Naruto, his main goal to get Gaara released, and if he can the blonde in the process, all the better. The Jonin and Oto Shinobi were facing the worst of the odds. He was facing Kakashi Hatake, which was bad enough, as well as a Tokubetsu Jonin. The Tsunade Jonin was thankful his face was covered in some way so as to hide the worry his eyes were likely showing. Temari was the first to strike, releasing a gale of wind blades to shred Sasuke and end her fight quickly. Sasuke dodged and continued the confrontation by throwing two kunai at Temari. Not deterred by the action, Temari unleashed another gale of wind, using her ability to attack and defend simultaneously. Sasuke anchored himself to the ground with chakra, attempting to weather the storm as many cuts appeared across his body. When the attack ceased, Temari was surprised by what Sasuke did next. Sasuke suddenly vanished from her line of sight only to appear behind her and throw out a strong straight to Temari's face. Shocked by the speed Sasuke demonstrated, she didn't protect herself from the strike. The hit launched her a few feet back while she landed on her side. She was able to keep a hold of her fan as she was knocked down. Sasuke chose not to press his advantage in the situation. Instead, he merely stood in a ready stance reminiscent of Rock Lee. His Sharingan was blazing, taking in every action of his foe to not be caught off guard. Temari slowly got to her feet, using her fan as support. "TCH. You think you're good?" spat Temari. Sasuke chose not to answer. Instead he rushed forward once again to strike the Sunakunoichi, but his path was blocked as a flurry of Senbon that nearly landed in his arms. A look to his left showed on the puppet. The damn puppet must have launched them. The split-second moment where his attention shifted away from Temari was when she struck. Sasuke was slammed back by another gale of wind. While it did cut into him like the previous blast, Temari's main intention was to launch the last Uchiha back. As soon as Sasuke's feet left the ground, Temari threw another blast at Naruto, believing that stunning Naruto was all that was needed to disrupt his chains. Kankuro sent his puppet Karasu lunging at Naruto, his goal to break the chains that bind his Otudo. Naruto had no real long-range abilities aside from his chains, however he was already using 6 to bind Gaara. Creating any more would cement him to the ground, making him a stationary target. Remembering this to be a terrible option, he was relegated to throwing weapons until he can find a way to either strike the puppet or get to Kankuro without losing Gaara. Naruto threw 3 shuriken at Kankuro, hoping to distract him from controlling his puppet. Kankuro effortlessly dodged the incoming projectiles. The next thing Naruto knew, the puppet was coming from his left. Soon one of its arms broke where the elbow would be on a normal human, revealing foot-long blade. Moving quickly, Naruto dodged the strike effortlessly by ducking under it. As the puppet was now in striking range, Naruto lashed out with an uppercut to destroy the puppet with a super strong punch. However, due to the puppet being controlled by a person, the puppet flew higher from its position to avoid the strike. Naruto's punch was soon followed by a high kick that managed to catch the puppet in the chest, launching it further into the air. Kankuro was immediately concerned. Damn. With how hard Karasu was launched, many of its internal systems may be damaged. Kankuro called Karasu back to him to launch a new offensive. As Karasu was flying back, Kankuro noticed Sasuke speeding toward his Oni-chan. Acting quickly, Kankuro had Karasu open its mouth and fire a volley of Senbon at Sasuke. The next thing Naruto knew, he was struck by a blast of wind from Temari. The strike disrupted his concentration, releasing Gaara. Gaara fell limply to the floor. Due to Naruto and Sasuke taking incredible hits from Temari, neither were able to stop Kankuro and Temari from retrieving Gaara. The two siblings wrapped one of Gaara's arms around their necks. The next thing they heard was their orders from their sensei as he landed next to them. He was the only survivor in the confrontation against Kakashi and Genma. His brown Jonin vest was covered in scratches, as was his face cover. Kankuro. Tamari. Get Gaara out of here. This shocked the two Suna siblings. Gaara is integral for this invasion to work, so he needs to be kept away from that blonde, said their sensei while pointing at Naruto. Whatever ability he has can shut down Gaara's chakra and access to Shukaku. Get Gaara out of here and get him to release Shukaku. His part of the plan can still be salvaged. Tamari and Kankuro nodded with a, yes, Baki-sensei. Before retreating beyond the walls of the stadium. Hey, wait, shouted Naruto. Before he could move, however, Baki appeared in front of Naruto to strike him down. Before Baki could strike, however, Kakashi lashed out with a heavy side kick to the Jonin's chest. The kick launched the Jonin back to a safe distance from Naruto and Sasuke. Now, let's let the genin play. Besides, here Kakashi's laid-back demeanor changed to something murderous. I need to teach you why you never make an attempt on my student's life, said Kakashi coldly. Naruto was surprised that Kakashi referred to him as his student. He was sure that since Kakashi didn't want anything to do with him, why else would he refuse to train him for the Chunin exam finals and pass him off to someone else? Baki now knew he couldn't attack the blonde lest he risk his own life in the process. Even more so now that Genma appeared next to Kakashi. Now Kakashi issued orders to his genin. Naruto, Sasuke, pursue Gaara and the other two. Do whatever it takes to stop them. Gaara is clearly integral to their invasion plans if they put so much effort into retrieving him. Right, responded Naruto while Sasuke nodded in affirmation. Believing his students didn't have the means to track Gaara, Kakashi summoned one of his ninkin to help the boys track the fleeing Suna trio. The ninkin he summoned was a small, brown pug that had a Konoha Hitai on top of his head accompanied by a blue vest while his right foreleg appeared to be wrapped in bandages. This is Pakun. Pakun, these are two of my genin, Naruto and Sasuke. Pakun did something that surprised Sasuke but not Naruto. Yo, he greeted as he raised a paw. Wow, Kakashi-sensei, you have a summon animal too. That's so cool, cheered Naruto. I'll need to ask Naruto about that later. For now I need to stay focused, thought Kakashi. Focus, Dobi, reprimanded Sasuke. What do you need, Kakashi? Asked Pakun. Pakun, I need you to track 3 Suna youths that just fled from here. Guide Naruto and Sasuke to them and keep out of the fight that will no doubt ensue. Got it, let's go, Pakun stated. Naruto and Sasuke followed Pakun in pursuit of the Suna trio. As the Konoha contingent set out, they did not realize they had a tag along in the form of Shino. Your students don't stand a chance against Gaara, taunted Baki. I don't know about that, replied Kakashi coolly. I agree, cut in Genma. With as strong as Uzumaki is, I think it's you who should be worried about your genin. After all, without our interference, Neji wouldn't be fighting right now, continued Genma. This comment surprised Kakashi. Just what did Naruto do to Neji that would require Genma's interference? Did he use the Kyuubi's chakra? Questioned Kakashi as a small amount of worry crept through his thoughts. He was worried about Naruto coming into contact with the creature that nearly destroyed Konoha. For much of the journey, the group traveled mostly in silence, preparing for the conflicts ahead. It wouldn't be until the group were in the woods surrounding Konoha that the silence was broken. Sasuke had been questioning if Kakashi was a good sensei if he was late to face off against Gaara, while Naruto was focused on Kakashi referring to him as one of his students. If that were true, then why did he pass him off to Ebisu and not train him himself? As these thoughts plagued the two, they were brought back to reality by the brown pug. Hey, focus, you two. We are closing in on the trio. Also, I have noticed that another has been following us since we left the stadium. He appears on and off, as if something is masking his presence. This put the two genin on guard. Someone has been following them since they left the Chunin exams arena. What were their intentions? Were they friend or foe? Many questions like this went through the boys' minds. Naruto then had an idea. Hey, how close are they? Asked Naruto. Pakun gave the air a quick sniff before replying. They are about 500 yards behind us, answered Pakun. Once told this, Naruto quickly stopped on a branch and closed his eyes. Sasuke and Pakun followed suit. Naruto, what are you doing? Shut up, Tem. I'm focusing. Using his chakra sensing abilities, Naruto was able to sense the presence was familiar. When the image became clearer in his mind, the outline showed to be that of Shino. It's Shino, proclaimed Naruto. This caught Sasuke and Pakun by surprise. How can you tell? Asked Pakun. I have the ability to sense chakra. I can see it to such a fine detail that I can see the person thanks to the shape their chakra takes inside them. Even they are under a henge, I'll see the person and the cloud of chakra that surrounds them. I think he has been following us by the bug I sensed inside my jacket collar, explained Naruto. Pakun was impressed with the kid's ability. He knew how useful sensors were, and to have one, even if he can't use it while moving, definitely helps. Sasuke was shocked. This was another skill Naruto had shown he had no knowledge of. Again, the whispers of the curse seal played in his head, see the skills your useless teammate has that you don't. Was Kakashi truly the best sensei for you? Surely there is someone is better out there for you, it whispered. Sasuke visibly winced. This worried Naruto. Hey Sasuke, are you okay? I'm fine. Bit back Sasuke, just drop it. Silence encompassed the group once again. So what do we do? Do we wait for Shino or go on? Asked Naruto. We should keep with the pursuit. That Shino kid will catch up to us, stated Pakun. Though Naruto wanted to wait for his friend, he also knew how important it was to stop Gaara if he is a Jinchuriki like himself. With a reluctant nod from Naruto, the group set out once more, hoping Shino will catch up to them before the fighting picks up. The 2 plus Ninken caught up to the Tsunade trio. Sasuke took the initiative, throwing a few kunai in the path of the fleeing Tsunade shinobi. Temari let out a tisk in annoyance while Kankuro frowned that they had been halted in their repositioning. The Tsunade trio turned to face the landing Konoha party, watching intently as the 2 shinobi got into taijutsu stances. Temari made a decision in that moment to keep her Ototos safe. Kankuro, go get Gaara out of her. Kankuro looked at his Oni-chan in shock. What? But Temari. Karasu is vulnerable to fire, so you are the poorest option against some with known fire jutsu. Besides, it is the job of the elder sibling to protect the younger, said Temari with a resigned smile. What neither sibling knew was that Gaara was beginning to regain his bearings. Sasuke wouldn't admit it out loud, but he jealous of the sibling bond the Tsunade trio was demonstrating. He was haunted by his memories of Itachi being a caring Oni-chan before that night and his shift to being a cold murderer that night. Sensing his weakness, the curse seal began to whisper to him once again. People will flaunt what they have in front of you unless you take it from them. Use your power. Take what she holds precious from her. This time he listened to the whispers. Naruto, Ninken, continue the pursuit. I'll handle her. Naruto looked toward his teammate. Sasuke, you sure? As he asked this, Kankuro left with Gaara. In an angry tone Sasuke shouted, I have this. Don't let them get away. Surprised by Sasuke's outburst, Pakun told Naruto to follow him, making a note to tell Kakashi about the boy's snap at his teammate. As Naruto and Pakun attempted to pursue the fleeing Kankuro and Gaara, Temari readied her fan to blast the 2 with one of her futon jutsu. However, she was stopped when Sasuke used his new speed to get in close to try and punch Temari. Acting quickly, the Suna Kunoichi used her still closed fan to block the strike, letting out a loud ringing in the forest. Temari was angered that she was unable to stop the remaining 2 from pursing her Otutos. You made a grave mistake, said Sasuke in a dark tone. Temari raised an eyebrow. Oh, and what was that? You've made me angry. Temari threw Sasuke back. As the 2 separated, Temari unfurled her fan and let loose a windstorm, Resenpu. A concentrated blast of wind was launched at Sasuke, forcing Sasuke to quickly move out of its path. Sasuke countered with his own jutsu, Kaden, Gokakyu no Jutsu. As the fireball approached, Temari surprised Sasuke by countering with a futon jutsu. With a smirk she released her next technique, Fusajin no Jutsu. This time the gust of wind was accompanied by a large blast of sand, smothering the flame and getting sand all over the surrounding area. Sasuke's anger grew as he was struck by the wind and fell down a level of the trees, landing harshly on a thick branch. Kill her. Show her why you are stronger. Use my power to show why you are stronger. It was here that Sasuke let the curse seal loose. Black flame-like markings spread from the base of his neck as his chakra began to get more malicious. They stopped covering a quarter of his face, but the foreign chakra seemed to burn his body as he used it. Temari was surprised by the appearance of the markings. She was startled when Sasuke looked back up at her with the same glint that Gaara gets when he is about to someone. Temari acted quickly, striking out with Kamedachi no Jutsu to keep Sasuke back. Sasuke was struck by the whirlwind of blades, launching him to the tree he was standing on. Thanks to the curse seal's power, he wasn't down for long. He got to his feet quickly and rushed the Suna Kunoichi at a speed she was not expecting. Sasuke struck the girl in the stomach with an uppercut before using a right hook to slam her head into the branch she was standing on to knock her out. It was there the seal began to whisper in his head once again. Kill her. She has hurt you. Use your new power. Show everyone your new strength. Sasuke reached for a kunai to slay the unconscious blonde before the memories of Sakura crying on his back begging to return to normal and Naruto yelling at him to fight and never give up during the preliminaries. Falling to his knees in agony, Sasuke forced the curse seal back behind the seal Kakashi gave him to restrain its influence. Sasuke was breathing heavily as sweat poured from his brow from the recent fight and resisting the seal's influence. That power, it's intoxicating, thought Sasuke as he rested to catch his breath, not noticing Shino moving past him to catch up with Naruto and the Ninken. It wouldn't be long before Naruto and Pakun caught up with Kankuro and Gaara. Kankuro sneered at the two. So you got past Temari? No matter, I won't let you hurt Gaara, said Kankuro as he placed Gaara against a tree. Oh yeah. Last I checked, it was your aunt that beat me, not you. So what can you do? Taunted Naruto. Kankuro's scowl grew with the taunt. He pulled Karasu off his back once more. Why you little? Kankuro sent Karasu at Naruto once more. This time each of its 6 arms revealed a foot-long blade poised to strike the blonde. Naruto acted quickly, leaping toward the puppet with a bravado. Pakun though would get the boyed. As Karasu closed in, Naruto released his chains once again, with 2 managing to catch the puppet once in its chest while another caught one of its arms. The single arm and chest immediately fell from Kankuro's control. Kankuro growled in annoyance at the loss of so much of his puppet. Before he could perform his next trick, he was suddenly struck in the cheek by a fist, launching him to another branch. Naruto was surprised by this but was happy to see who struck Kankuro. Shino, called the excited blonde. Shino spoke up in his usual monotone. Naruto, go after Gaara, I will fight him. Especially since I was supposed to be his opponent in the first place. Everyone looked to where Gaara was placed only to see a vacant spot. Kankuro was panicking. Gaara. Where did you go? Ah crap. Come on, we got to find him. Shouted Naruto. Can't you do that yourself? Questioned Pakun. Naruto halted in his tracks. Slapping his forehead for the umpteenth time about forgetting about his sensory abilities when he needed them most. Closing his eyes, Naruto concentrated and was able to locate the fleeing Jinchuriki. I got him, he is heading that way, exclaimed Naruto while pointing in the direction that Gaara had gone. Go, said Shino, leave him to me. Naruto looked back to Shino, are you sure, Shino? Shino nodded. Don't concern yourself with me. Give me 10 minutes and I'll come and help you. Naruto looked at Shino with concern for his friend. All right, Shino, be careful, said Naruto as he and Pakun leapt away. When the duo were gone, Kankuro began to taunt Shino. You are an arrogant fool. Shino raised an eyebrow behind his sunglasses. If that blonde can't wrap Gaara up in those chains again, you will learn what true terror is. Oh, And why is that? I'll let you find out. Wouldn't want to spoil the surprise after all. Seeing the conversation was now over, Shino stretches out hands releasing a multitude of insects, forming a cloud around him. Kankuro sent Karasu at his new opponent, revealing a smaller blade on a telescope hidden close to the wrist of one of its arms ready to stab the young Aburame. Shino narrowly dodged the strike. He noticed a strange purple liquid running down this blade. Poison, thought Shino. Suddenly the puppet's head jerked up and opened its mouth as if to shoot something at Shino. However, nothing happened. Damn it, I forgot I used the Senbon in the arena, complained Kankuro. Seeing an opening, another Shino appeared next to Kankuro and lashed out with another punch that grazed Kankuro's cheek. The second Shino made no move to chase down the fleeing Kankuro. The two Shinos regrouped, making Kankuro scowl seeing that he was now outnumbered. So you made a bunchin of some kind. So, you gonna tell me which one is the real one? Asked Kankuro hoping that the Konoha shinobi would answer him in arrogance. To quote you, I'll let you find out. Wouldn't want to spoil the surprise after all, retorted Shino. Kankuro scowled at his words being thrown back in his face. Why you? Said an angered Kankuro. He maneuvered his finger in a way that revealed a hidden cannon in one of Karasu's arms. A clear, circular capsule was fired at the two Shinos. Kankuro immediately panicked. Crap, I fired the wrong one. The capsule exploded at the two Shinos' feet, creating an obscuring smokescreen. Poison smoke, thought a worried Shino with both jumping away from the cloud. When Shino landed, he let out a cough. I must have inhaled some, thought a worried Shino. When he looked to where he last saw the Suna puppeteer, he saw that Kankuro disappeared from sight. Suddenly, Karasu appears behind Shino with another wrist blade revealed. Damn it, that blonde-haired Gaki ruined many of the chest mechanisms when he speared Karasu. Raged Kankuro. As Karasu struck out at Shino, the blade went right through him, revealing the one he struck to be a Mushi Bunshin. Before he could pull his puppet back, the bugs enveloped Karasu, smothering it and locking its joints. Damn him. He had his annoying insects cage Karasu. I can't move him. Suddenly the real Shino appeared. He let loose a line of insects from his person that made a trail to the bound puppet. As more crawled over the puppet, some began to crawl along the chakra threads Kankuro was using to control his puppet. Damn it, those annoying insects will reveal me to him, thought Kankuro as he cut the lines. Before Kankuro could move again, he felt something crawling along his hands. Looking down, he saw his hands covered in bugs. Leaping from the bushes in fright, Kankuro asked, "Where did these bugs come from?" "I was sure to the strings before they could find me. That punch I threw that grazed you, I attached a female beetle to you. From there you were always detectable to my hive. I had many of my Kikaichu lying in wait to ambush you when you dropped your guard," explained Shino. Suddenly Shino fell to his knees, then face first to the branch he was standing on. Damn it, the poison I inhaled was a paralytic. With so few of my Kikaichu within me, it will be a while before I can move again. Sorry Naruto, it looks like I won't be able to help you after all, thought a saddened Shino. Not too far away from the fight between Shino and Kankuro, a dizzy Gaara was wandering through the forest. Often using one of the many trees to steady himself. His left hand was clutching his aching head, wincing with every step he took. Within his head, the Shukaku was screaming at him, ordering him to slay the blonde that dare silence him. The screaming within his mind did not allow the red head to focus, moving purely on instinct to find a location to wait for Shukaku's screaming to stop. Suddenly Naruto and Pakun landed in a tree above the struggling red head. What's wrong with him? Is Shukaku talking to him? Questioned Naruto. Kid, I don't know what's going on with him, but whatever it isn't good, stated Pakun. Despite how close they two were, Shukaku was distracting Gaara from hearing it, but it heard. The shouting within Gaara's head grew exponentially, to the point that Gaara fell to his knees as he screamed in agony. Soon Naruto and Pakun felt it. Even without using his sensory abilities, he could feel the oppressive chakra of the Biju leaking out of the Suna boy. The oppressiveness of the chakra caused both boy and dog to recoil from its release. Slowly, robotically, Gaara turned his head to look at Naruto and by extension Pakun. Craziness and rage burned within the teal eyes of the boy as deep blue, vein-like markings began to spread over his body as Gaara began to drool like a rabid animal. Soon his right arm and corresponding side of his face began to change. The dirt that was around him was ground away and dried out by Shukaku's chakra, where it then flowed up his body allowing part of Shukaku's form to appear over Gaara. Shukaku's eyes were an air yellow with the pupil being a black four-pointed star with black circles between the points of the star within black sclera. His new right arm and the right side of his face now looked like Shukaku's. The face was that of a bulkier-looking raccoon, as if it were mixed with an aggressive dog breed. It had a pointed ear on the top of its sandy brown head, while its arm was that of a long claw that had additional fingers coming out past its wrists, all the while the blue vein-like markings stayed through the transformation. It was at this point Pakun had something very important to say to Naruto. "Okay kid, I have helped you locate the Tsunade kid. I'll let Kakashi know what's going on here so, don't die," the dog said before poofing away in a cloud of smoke. Naruto was stunned. What the? Naruto didn't get to finish as Gaara let out a bestial roar as he threw himself at Naruto. Naruto quickly dodged, by jumping far back from his previous position. Gaara barreled through branch Naruto was standing on using his new arm to attach himself to the tree he just ran into. Naruto and Gaara once again stood facing off. Suddenly in a burst of speed Gaara charged forward. Using the reflexes trained into him by Tsunade, Naruto dodges the attack by turning and leaning back to near parallel to the ground. He ferociously brought on of his legs up, kicking Gaara in the stomach and launching him into the air. This did not stop the mad Jinchuriki as he let loose a flurry of sand shuriken as he resumed his descent, though Naruto dodged around all of them. Gaara threw his sand arm out to a tree to pull himself towards it. As soon as he made contact, he made a mad dash for Naruto once again. Naruto met Gaara's charge with his own. Being the more nimble of the two, Naruto dodged Gaara's strike aimed at taking his head off and struck him in the face, launching him backwards. Not wanting to let Gaara have a reprieve, Naruto pursued with a massive push off his branch with his chakra. Naruto now followed Gaara's flight path as he was now over the flying red head. Naruto lashed out with an enhanced strike where Gaara ricocheted off the ground and back towards the soaring blonde, who then proceeded to repeat the process until the two crashed through one of the thickest trees in the forest and landing on the forest floor. As the smoke gathered, a sand claw from Gaara appeared and struck ahead of its position only for another figure to leap from the smoke. A loud, inhuman roar was let loose and the smoke was cleared. What Naruto saw was a Gaara now having his entire upper body was covered by sand, bringing him closer to looking like the Aikibi. Gaara threw his hands forward, latching them to the ground as if preparing to slingshot himself forward. Gaara flew at an even more impressive speed, forcing Naruto to sprawl to the ground to avoid the strike. The wind pressure that was caused by Gaara's flight nearly tore the blonde from the ground as he sailed overhead. Naruto quickly jumped to his feet, not wanting to be a static target for the mad boy. Gaara let loose a mad laugh and howl. "That's it, Uzumaki. Let me feel alive." Gaara charged forward once again. This time Naruto was prepared and ducked the strike and collided his fist with Gaara's new jaw, cracking his knuckles and the beast's teeth. A shockwave formed from the impact, and the force released forced Gaara to halt all forward movement but was not launched Gaara back. Gaara was relishing the fight, never had he been provided such a foe. Naruto on the other hand kept pushing forward, following his strike up with an uppercut that staggered the red head. Naruto grabbed the staggered beast by its new ears and kneed it in the face, cracking the sand. This was soon followed by a wide, flying side kick that had the side of his foot meet Gaara's head, which launched the boy of his unsteady feet. He once again collided with a tree that collapsed on top of him but did not remain under it for long. As Gaara charged once again, a large mouth was opening on his back, taking a massive gulp of air. As Naruto attempted to dodge the strike from Gaara's arm, the mouth let loose an air blast that struck the Uzumaki square in the chest, cracking most of his ribs as it launched him through the air. The crazed look in Gaara's eyes only seemed to get worse with that hit. Come on, Uzumaki. I know that wasn't everything. Give me more. Give me more. As Naruto stood, he removed his shredded shirt and jacket, revealing the bruising and lacerations done by Gaara's attack. Naruto breathed in deeply before putting his hands in a ram seal. Gaara was more than content to let Naruto do what he was doing. He was enjoying himself far too much to end the fight here. Black marks started to spread across the blonde that originated from a point on his body Gaara couldn't see. Suddenly all the damage Gaara's last attack had done seemed to steam and vanish, leaving no trace they were there. Once that was done, the black marks receded. Amazing. I can still feel the seal's presence on my forehead. Did I not use everything I stored? Unknown to Naruto, but the Kyuubi within him was aware of what was going on. Part of it was pleased that its vessel was able to hold its own against its sibling without its help. It was also disappointed, as the boy calling upon his power would grant it the means to attempt to free itself. For now, it would aid the boy, if for no other reason than to watch Shukaku lose to a mere human. To aid the boy, it refilled the seal on his forehead before the boy cancelled his jutsu. Thrilled by the continuation of the fight, Gaara cackled maniacally. His sand was spawning a tail that matched his arms. Yes. 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 This is great, Uzumaki. You will prove to the world my existence. Ha 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 ha. Come on then, show that you are not afraid. Show me. The mad container bellowed. Naruto prepared himself to clash with Gaara once again by getting into the practice stance he was taught for the month leading to the Chunin exams. The two ran forward once again. Figuring Naruto would dodge his initial strike, Gaara readied his tail to be the immediate follow-up so Naruto would be struck once again. Naruto ducked the first strike as usual but surprised Gaara by slightly leaping over the boy's tail. Suddenly, his tail was struck, embedding it into the ground, causing his speed to slow to a halt. Without warning, Naruto had latched onto it with both hands and began slamming him into the ground repeatedly. Naruto was channeling chakra to his muscle to stimulate them as a means of boosting his physical strength, though because he was doing it with little practice, he still had some minor damage appear in the form of muscle tarring. The Kyuubi was using its own chakra to repair the damage, as it was enjoying the show far too much to let it come to an end here. Naruto then threw Gaara across the forest, where he proceeded to bounce a few times before being violently punched into the ground by Naruto. When he was stopped, Naruto laid into the boy with punch after punch, hoping that any of the strikes would stop the mad Jinchuriki. Eventually Naruto switched to double-fisted hammer strikes, but nothing seemed to more than crack the shell. Gaara's tail soon slapped the blonde off of him, striking with enough force to nearly break bones. The blonde was heavily exhausted. A stamina monster he may be, but those heavy strikes he was dishing out were eating away at that fast. Seeing the blonde breathing heavy, Gaara began to taunt Naruto. Come now, Uzumaki. Surely you aren't done just yet. Make me feel alive. Coming up with something, Naruto prepared for the next reckless charge. Being predictable, Gaara charged once again. Naruto was channeling chakra to his right fist and leg. As soon as Gaara was close enough, Naruto struck out with his leg in an upward, straight kick that fully stretched his adductors and glutes. The release of chakra enhancing the strike launched Gaara high into the air, clearing the whole forest. Naruto not only caught up to Gaara but passed him. From what the dazed boy could see, the black markings were back once again. Naruto was channeling as much chakra as he could to his arm and fist. There was so much, the muscles that made up his arm began to expand under his skin. A visible coating of chakra could now be seen by the eye as the pressure in the air around the two began to increase with how much Naruto was using. Ha! With his loud battle cry, Naruto struck. The force behind the strike would have ripped his arm apart if he had not released the Byakugo no In. The strike launched Gaara back to the earth with so much force that his landing not only made a crater but also buried him well beneath the bottom of said crater. Naruto fell back to the ground sore, exhausted and praying that the fight was over. Sadly, it wasn't. As his descent reached the ground, a large rumbling was starting to become active. As soon as he touched down, the ground around Gaara's impact site was upturned and out came the Ikibi no Shukaku accompanied by a deafening roar that halted the fighting of all that heard its cry. Naruto was forced to retreat from the impact site lest he be crushed by the upturned earth. The beast seemed to take in its surroundings before its shoulders seemed to shake. Before Naruto could question what was wrong with the beast, it let out a laugh that could be heard for miles. Ha 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 ha. I'm finally free. Here I come, baby. It once again surveyed its surroundings. The forest surrounding him for the most part seemed untouched. Off in the distance, it could see Konoha under siege by 3 giant snakes, well too as a teal-colored toad with 2 swords crossed across its back just flattened one. Nearby, it spotted the boy that had been pounding its host into the ground. Naruto, having fled from the crater to avoid being crushed by the ground Shukaku overturned with its appearance, was now more tired than he ever felt when training with Tsunade and Shizune. Shukaku now knew its target. I hope you are all ready to die. It shouted while gesturing to Naruto, let's do this. Feeling no other choice in the matter, Naruto channeled as much chakra as he could, once again being aided by the Kyuubi. It was the strongest of the Biju and thus Shukaku needed to learn its place when it came to fighting its host. When Naruto slammed his hand down on the ground to summon Katsuyu, no one was prepared for what happened next. There was a cloud of smoke, a loud boom, and when the smoke cleared, the only thing that could be seen was a giant white slug with 3 blue streaks that ran vertically down the middle and side of its body from its head and tapering off at its tail. Shukaku had disappeared. Naruto looked around but couldn't see the giant tanuki. Greetings, Naruto-san. Did you have need of my aid? Asked Katsuyu. Yeah. The Ikibi was released by this boy named Gaara and I figured I was going to need some help, so I was hoping maybe you could help me out, but here Naruto scratched the top of his head. He kinda seems to have disappeared, said Naruto. Oh, by the way, did you get bigger? I don't think you were this big when I first summoned you. Katsuya nodded her head slightly in understanding. Well, Naruto-san, when you first summoned me, you only used enough chakra to summon 1/20th of my being. This time, however, you seem to have summoned me at my full size. I must say this is a great accomplishment, as even Tsunade-sama has never been able to do that before. At this point, Naruto forgot about the Shukaku as he began to cheer and dance around Katsuyu. Wahoo! Yeah, I knew I was awesome, cheered the blonde. As Naruto was dancing around, something that Katsuyu was on top of was making her feel uncomfortable, like a splinter in your finger. Naruto-san, said Katsuyu, getting the young blonde's attention. I believe I know what happened to Shukaku. Huh, really? Where did he go? We got to stop him before he destroys the village. As feathers began to fall around the arena, the Kazekage turned toward the Hokage. Out from his sleeve, the Kazekage pulled a large ball from his sleeve and threw it on the ground, unleashing a large cloud of smoke that obscured the vision the occupants of the cage box. Immediately, the Hokage stood to his feet as his guard was impaled by several long kunai that went through his flak jacket and pushed him to the back wall. Hokage-sama, leave, now, the man rasped out as he fell to his knees, then the ground on his side. Suddenly, the Kazekage wrapped his left arm around the Hokage's neck and held a kunai to his temple. The Kazekage dragged the Hokage to the roof of the cage box. Suddenly 4 Anbu, Zo, Baku, Taka, and Inu, arrived on the scene. Baku, Taka, and Inu were in black full-body cloaks and Zo is in a white full-body cloak. The Kazekage's guards attempted to halt the Anbu, but Zo cut them down with 2 kunai as he shouted, "You will not interfere." The bisected bodies of the Kazekage's guards fell to the roof with a thud. As soon as the bodies hit the floor, 4 individuals came out of the cloaks. The first that landed on the roof was a fair-skinned teen with straight, long dark blue hair that covered the left side of his face while leaving the right side exposed. He was wearing a dark green shade of lipstick as well as eyeliner. He was wearing a black shirt with a low collar under a brown tunic, which had a front and back apron, that had long sleeves that were held down by two black vambraces. On the front apron was the taijutsu that was fully gray, rather than its usual black and white, which represented the unit he led for his master, the Sound 4. His tunic was secure with a thick purple rope belt, with the ends aiming up. Secured within his rope belt was a large scroll, though what its purpose was, is an unknown. He was wearing a maroon-red beaded necklace and skin-tight black shorts that stopped above his knees. He was also wearing black, Konoha-style shinobi sandals with calf-length leg warmers covered by bandages with a flare at the top reminiscent of loose cavalier boots. What made the teen really stand out was that he had a second head growing out of his neck that had an inverted hairstyle, meaning its left side was exposed. There was a single woman amongst the group. She was fair-skinned with a slender build though she was rather short. She has brown eyes accented by her long eyelashes which complemented her usual impassive expression. She has waist-length dark pink hair with a bang that was chin-length while falling over her face. Like her colleague, she too was wearing low-collar black shirt under a brown tunic, that had a front and back apron, though she had short sleeves but she has the same black vambraces. On the front apron was the taijutsu that was fully gray representing that she was a member of the Sound 4. Her tunic was also secured with a thick purple rope belt, with its ends aimed upwards. She was also wearing black, Konoha-style shinobi sandals with calf-length leg warmers covered by bandages with a flare at the top reminiscent of loose cavalier boots as well as skin-tight, black knee-length shorts. On her head was a black beanie with three small pipes that ran along the top of the hat while bandages were wrapped around it. The next was a dark-skinned teen who has his shaggy, black hair tied into a high ponytail. He was slightly taller than the two-headed teen. His most standout feature was the 6 arms he has, each of which have a black vambrace of their own. He wore a sleeveless, low-collar, black shirt under a sleeveless tunic that was gray rather than brown with a V-neck cut in the collar. It still had the front and back aprons as well as the gray taijutsu. His tunic was also secured by a thick, purple rope belt with the ends pointing up. He was also wearing skin-tight black shorts that stopped halfway down his upper leg as well as black, Konoha-style shinobi sandals with calf-length leg warmers covered by bandages with a flare at the top reminiscent of loose cavalier boots. The final person to land was a tall but portly teen with orange hair cut into 3 lines reminiscent of mohawks, one down the center and one on each side of his head. He has fair skin and narrow, slanted orange eyes. Unlike his colleagues, he wore no undershirt beneath his beige, sleeveless tunic that has the front and back aprons and the taijutsu on the front apron. He wore loose-fitting black pants that fell halfway down his shins, a necklace that was comprised of many, thin, metallic rods with a red bead separating each rod, and a set of black vambraces. He too was wearing black, Konoha-style shinobi sandals with calf-length leg warmers covered by bandages with a flare at the top reminiscent of loose cavalier boots. They took up positions around the 2 cages in a rectangular formation that encompassed most of the roof they were on. As soon as they got into position, they went through several hand seal. Acting quickly, the 4 Anbu rushed to not be separated from Hiruzen. As they approached, the teens shouted, "Shishian Jin." As they stuck their arms out, a violet-purple rectangle began to form around the 2 cage, using the 4 teens as the corners to the bottom face of the rectangle. This did not stop the Anbu as they managed to make it inside the barrier before it was fully formed. "TCH. They got in," said the one with 2 heads. Anime and manga. The cage stared down the 4 Anbu, but no expression could be determined due to the veil that covered his face. Despite having a kunai pointed at his temple, Hiruzen spoke. "I never imagined Suna would betray Konoha. Treaties are nothing but a smokescreen best used to lull the other party into feeling secure until you are ready to strike. But now this pitiful competition is over. From here, history will be made by the victor." Hiruzen was shocked by Rasa's words. Are you starting a war? Yes, responded Rasa in a gleeful tone. In a panicked-laced tone, let us avoid this needless violence and reach an accord through negotiation, Kazakaga-sama. There is still time to avoid needless death. At those words the Kazekage let out a chuckle. Old age has slowed your mind, Sarutobi-sensei. At the title the Kazekage used to address him, Hiruzen's eyes went wide. Silence enveloped the two. This allowed them to see the conflict that happened in the center of the arena. I guess Jinchuriki are only useful when they control their Biju, commented the Kazekage. This was the final piece that Hiruzen needed. He now for sure knew the person with a kunai to his neck was not Rasa. So that's what this is about. Manipulating others to do a deed you wish, you have changed. And your foolishness has stagnated Konoha, so I shall be victorious, retorted the Kazekage. Orochimaru was a disturbingly pale man with golden eyes that contained a unique slit pupil. Around his eyes and down his nose was purple eyeshadow that was rather reminiscent of snake fangs that could be considered birthmarks as he had them even as a child. He has waist-length black hair that framed his face as his bangs curved across his face, as well as blue, sharp tomo earrings that were hidden beneath his hair. Anime and manga. Hiruzen let out a sigh. I knew this day would come, but I won't die easy, he replied with fire in his voice. You should have named another successor because as our guests will soon bear witness to the death of the Sandaime, said Orochimaru as he licked the blade of his kunai. For a while nothing was happening. Suddenly the kunai in Orochimaru's hand began to move. As soon as they noticed, the Anbu closed the gap between them and Orochimaru to save their Hokage. Then the kunai was embedded in Orochimaru's palm. He then let Hiruzen go and walked away, confusing the Anbu. As soon as Orochimaru was a few paces away, the Anbu took up a loose box formation around Hiruzen. As Orochimaru was walking away, Hiruzen asked, do you process some kind of regret towards me? No, I was feeling a bit sleepy. I just wanted to make sure that I am awake for this, Orochimaru said with glee as he turned to face Hiruzen. This was a sign to the Hokage and the Anbu that the fight they were anticipating was about to start, so Hiruzen removed his cage robes. Under his Hokage robes, Hiruzen was wearing a black body suit with mesh armor showing over his lower legs and forearms. He has a mute, green gauntlet over his right arm. He has a helmet with plated armor that fell to his shoulders in the same green as his gauntlet. Over his helmet, he has a bandana-style hitai with its ties being long enough to drag on the floor, even at his full height. On the back was a piece of armor that was bolted to the bodysuit at the shoulders, which had the kanji for Sandaime Hokage. Placed over the armor were two shuriken holsters on his back. He had open-topped sandals that were held up by a strap around his ankle with an additional strap that went over his toes. Underneath the Kazecage's robes, Orochimaru was wearing his usual khaki tunic that fell to his mid-shin with slits running up to his waist. He has a black, skin-tight high collar that was layered over his tunic as well as black long-sleeve shirt underneath. He has gray, pocketless pants with his lower shins wrapped in bandages, black Konoha-style sandals and a thick purple rope belt. It looks like they are about to start, commented the six-armed shinobi. Put a barrier on the inside, commanded the two-headed one. At his orders, the four Oto shinobi protected themselves with an additional barrier reminiscent of the first they cast. Originally I was hoping that no one would interfere, but you are going to die all the same, taunted the hubby Sanin. Soon the surrounding air became weighted down by the pressure coming from the hubby Sanin and the Hokage. With no signal needed, the combatants rushed forward to begin the battle. Hiruzen made the opening move. From a shuriken holster on his back, Hiruzen threw a shuriken at his wayward student. Going through a few hand seals, Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He called. As the shuriken flew, they multiplied from the single, original shuriken to 80. As the shuriken flew towards their target, Orochimaru went through his own hand seals. He suddenly clapped both of his hands together, Kuchios, Edo Tensai. At his words, caskets began to rise from roof. As the second coffin was rising, The Anbu disrupted Orochimaru's jutsu by throwing a few kunai that the captain caught as they missed their target. He used the thrown kunai as melee weapons, slashing at Orochimaru, forcing the hubby Sannin to leap away or risk getting slain. This also cancelled the rest of Orochimaru's jutsu, leaving just the two caskets that managed to rise from the Edo Tensei. Seeing what was written on the caskets, Hiruzen shouted, "Get back!" The Anbu followed the orders of their cage, once again taking positions around Hiruzen. Orochimaru stepped up to the caskets as they fell open, revealing their occupants, the Shodai and Nadaime Hokage. Hashirama Senju, the Shodai Hokage, was a tall man with tan skin and dark eyes that complemented his waist-length black hair that has a center part with two fringes framing his face due to his Hittite holding back his side bangs. He was wearing a black bodysuit under dark red armor that has the pauldrons and tassets that fell to the side of his legs, built from numerous plates that hung from the cuirass. On his pauldrons was the Senju clan symbol. He has his lower shins wrapped in white bandages while having open sandals that were secured by a strap that went around his ankles. Anime and manga. Tobirama Senju, the Nadaime Hokage, was nearly as tall as his brother, the Shodai, but he has fair skin with shaggy, silver hair. He has 3 red marks on his face, one under each eye and one on his chin. He has black eyes like Hashirama and wears a similar outfit, the difference is being his armor is blue with a white fur collar and his tassets fell over his front and back. Under his pauldrons were a set of rear braces while in place of the traditional Hittite is a hapuri. He has his lower shins wrapped in white bandages while having open sandals that were secured by a strap that went around his ankles. The two deceased Hokage took in their surroundings as their zombie-like forms slowly moved out of their casket, which fell to the roof as the two Hokage vacated them. The first to speak was Tobirama. The Edo Tensei, huh? And that pale one is the one who summoned us. So we have to fight? Questioned the Shodai. With the caskets now fallen to the side, Orochimaru stepped up to the two deceased Hokage with 2 kunai that had red seal tags tied to the rings on the handles. "We are sorry for troubling you, Sarutobi," said a sad Hashirama. "Let's get started," commented Orochimaru as he inserted the seal tags into the heads of the deceased Hokage. Soon their zombie-like bodies began to release smoke as their forms began to turn back to that of their physical prime. Their eyes then became white and unfocused while the sclera becoming pitch black. As the older cages seemed to regain their forms, mocking the dead. "Nothing good ever comes from messing with the past," chastised Hiruzen. Once their forms had finished becoming rejuvenated, Hiruzen gave an order to his Anbu. "Follow my lead. Kaden. Karyuenden." The Anbu followed suit, mixing their flames in a futon, Repusho to empower the fire wave. In response, the Nadaime released his own jutsu with a single hand seal, Suiten, Sujinheki. The Nadaime spewed forth a massive amount of water that formed into a barrier that stopped the wave of fire and blanketed the area in a cloud of steam. Hiruzen and his Anbu immediately went on guard. It was known that the Nadaime was a sensor nin and had a unique method of utilizing this ability. Suddenly a new jutsu was called from the steam. Suiten. Sushoha. The steam was condensed a massive vortex of water that shot towards Hiruzen and the Anbu. Acting quickly, Hiruzen and one of the Anbu went through a series of seals allow for another jutsu. Doden. Doryuheki. The two shouted in unison. The two coughed up a copious amount of mud forming a wall that was nearly as tall as the barrier they were in. Sadly, the wall did not stop water, merely diverting it. To stay safe until the water became inert, the 5 jumped to the wall and used their chakra to stick to it. The 5 were not idle, however. They used the cover of the wall to position themselves for a surprise attack. They unleashed another Doden jutsu, Doden, Ganchuso, which spawned several spikes around Orochimaru and the revived cage to skewer them. The Shodai acted quickly and used one of his own jutsu that stopped the reinforced spike, showing everyone the power of one of the world's strongest Kekkei Genkai. During this time, Hiruzen performed a jutsu of his own. Kuchio's no jutsu. Enma. Enma is a white-furred monkey that stood taller than Hiruzen himself. He has a mane of long hair that falls from his head to his tail with sideburns that reach past his chin and a goatee of near equal length. He wears a black bodysuit that stops at the elbows and knees, revealing he was wearing a full body suit of mesh armor. Over his bodysuit he was wearing a sleeveless kimono shirt that was orange with black stripes. Across the collar, waist, and cut-off points of the sleeves were white fur, though they were a darker shade than his fur. The shirt was held closed by a maroon-red sash while a Konoha Hitai was secured on his forehead. Taking in his surroundings, Enma was confused. Hiruzen, what is going on? Enma asked. Orochimaru has invaded Konoha with the help of Suna. He has revived Hashirama-sama and Tobirama-sama. Tisk. Sad Sarutobi, all because you failed to him that day, replied a ticked-off Enma. With a sigh Hiruzen responded, I'm getting to it. Enma, you need to become the Vajra Nyoi, said Hiruzen. With annoyance in his tone, Enma answered his longtime friend. Fine henge. Kongonyoi, shouted Enma. Enma transformed into a black staff with yellow end caps that was half as wide as Hiruzen while being said to be as hard as diamonds and heavy to wield. The staff has the ability to change its width and length at Enma's will, however his mass never seemed to change. Hiruzen came out from behind the wall and stared down the protective dome the Shodai had created. The Anbu had also waited patiently for the Shodai to release his jutsu but stayed at a respectable distance to not get hit by a sneak attack. Seeing the staff in his sensei's hands once the dome fell, Orochimaru brought out his own weapon by regurgitating a snake that then regurgitated Orochimaru's sword known as the Kusanagi. The sword has a black blade with a silver edge. It has a gold-looking handguard and holding plates, while the handle was white wrapped in black cord wrap held together by a gold pommel. The sword was said to be able to cut through nearly anything while being able to extend to any length, though the wielder needed to be careful as its mass increased with its length. Hiruzen stood before Orochimaru with Enma in his hands. Take care of the pests, and when you are done slay the old man, ordered Orochimaru. The two cages said nothing as they launched themselves at the Anbu. Not deterred by their foes, the Anbu charged at the two Hokage to aid the Sandaime by removing this threat. Hiruzen got into a ready stance, holding most of the staff forward like spear, his knees slightly bent and his feet spread wider than his shoulders, with most of his body aimed away from Orochimaru, creating a harder profile to hit. Orochimaru took up a neutral Kenjutsu stance. He has his feet staggered at shoulder width with his arms relaxed and fully extended at his hips with the blade angled toward his Hiruzen as he moved. Despite the ensuing combat of the Anbu and Hokage going on around them, the two seemed to be isolated in their own world as they stared each other down. Hiruzen struck first, thrusting his staff forward toward Orochimaru's chest. Using the flat side of his blade, Orochimaru deflected the blow but did his best to keep his blade in contact with the staff to close the distance between the two fighters. Knowing his former student's plan, Hiruzen performed a quick flourish with a back step, breaking the contact of the two weapons. Once again Orochimaru was on the defensive as Hiruzen aimed another strike toward Orochimaru's midsection. Orochimaru was once again forced to deflect the strike with the flat of his blade. As Hiruzen struck out, he began stepping forward. With every few strikes Orochimaru was forced to step back, else he could be struck by the weapon. Seeing he was getting nowhere quickly, Orochimaru jumped back to not be in range of Hiruzen's staff. As soon as he did, the staff's length shot out to pursue him. Ducking low, Orochimaru brought his blade horizontally over his head as the staff nearly stuck him. Taking advantage of his current position, Orochimaru rushed forward, keeping his blade in contact with the staff. Seeing what was happening, Enma quickly tried to become his normal size again. Enma returned back to Hiruzen too late, forcing the Sandaime to change his stance and choke up on the staff to use both ends to fend off Orochimaru. Orochimaru lashed out with a strong horizontal slash that was blocked with the staff being held perpendicular to the ground. From there, Hiruzen brought the staff down hard. Sadly for the Hokage and his partner, the strike was dodged. However, It was followed up with a thrust and the staff being rotated to strike with the back side. Orochimaru was forced to dodge each of these strikes as he overextended his weapon away from his body with the heavy strike earlier. Once again, the two were at weapon's length from each other. Orochimaru raised his weapon to strike for a right cross strike. As he brought his weapon down, he used the Kusanagi's special ability. The blade of the weapon extended to near equal length of Enma's staff form. As the blade extended, so did its mass, allowing the blade to strike with more force. Hiruzen used Enma to push the blade to the side, going as far as to hop away to the side from his current position. As soon as he touched down, Hiruzen had the staff extend once again. Orochimaru was still recalling the blade to its original length, so he was forced to block with his arms up, the blade slanted down. Sadly, this gave Enma and Hiruzen the advantage. Out from the sides of the staff came Enma's arms, however they were upside down. They latched on Orochimaru's wrists, preventing him from moving, as his head and neck came out from the bottom of the blocked staff, where he used his fangs to bite into Orochimaru's throat and rip his windpipe out. Orochimaru dropped his sword, which clanged to the roof, so he could cover his throat with his pale hands. Enma once again reformed to his normal length as he and Hiruzen watched Orochimaru fall to his knees. To the surprise of both the Monkey King and the Sandaime, Orochimaru's eyes rolled to the back of his head, his mouth opened wide, and two pale hands grabbed the upper and lower sections of his jaw and forced them apart. The two nearly vomited as they watched another Orochimaru climbed out of covered in slime. The new Orochimaru bent down and retrieved his sword and took in his foe's disgusted expressions. "What do you think, sensei? It's a new jutsu I developed when someone manages to maim me in a way I deem disadvantageous," explained Orochimaru. Despite the silence, the two were stunned too. Enma broke from his stupor first. "That's just vile," commented the Monkey King. Soon a light amount of steam came into the area while water seemed to wash across their feet. The two applied chakra to the bottom of their feet, raising them out of the water. The two once again clashed weapons as Hiruzen thrust his staff forward, which Orochimaru once again deflected to the side. Taking advantage of the deflection, Hiruzen performed another flourish, but instead of another thrust, Hiruzen went for a downward strike. Orochimaru brought the Kusanagi up for a horizontal block. As soon as the weapons collided, Orochimaru allowed the staff to push his blade down, sliding the staff off. This allowed him to use the force of the strike to aid in swinging his sword up by rotating his wrist for the strike as he extended his blade. Hiruzen was forced to jump back lest he lose an arm to the sword. While he managed to not lose his arm to the strike, Orochimaru drew Hiruzen's blood by cutting a sizable gash up Hiruzen's chest. Orochimaru rushed forward so strike down the weakened Hiruzen. However, the old Hokage wasn't done yet. Hiruzen used his bad arm as brace before extending the staff once again. Orochimaru dodged the strike but was blindsided by the straight punch that Enma delivered before Orochimaru passed the staff. The strike disorientated the hubby Sannin, so he didn't see the staff being swung towards him, that sent him flying towards the wall of the barrier. Reacting quickly, Orochimaru used the Tsunade Jishu to grab onto the roof to halt his flight. He then rushed his former sensei as soon as he touched the roof. Before he was close enough to use the Kusanagi at its standard length, he extended the blade to slash with a left-sided, diagonal strike. Hiruzen leapt back and swung Enma into the blade, batting it to the side. Hiruzen extended Enma once again to strike his former student. Orochimaru brought the handle of his sword up to his chin, rotating the blade towards the sky as the blade retracts. Enma collided with the side of blade with a loud clang. Acting quickly, the hubby Sannin rotated his sword where the guard met the staff to but his blade over it to prevent a follow-up strike as he rushed forward. With his shoulder injured like it is, Hiruzen was unable to perform a flourish strike. His next best action was to bring the staff up similar to how Orochimaru did as Enma returned to his standard length. This allowed him to strike out towards Orochimaru's feet to keep him back. Once again, the two were back at a stalemate and forced to take neutral stances so save energy for their next clash. Before their confrontation could continue, the Anbu captain landed next to Hiruzen, though he seemed to be missing an arm while the previous two Hokage soon followed. Hiruzen quickly batted the incoming Hokage away, forcing them to Orochimaru's side. Above the Sandaime and the Hubby Sannin, the Anbu and Hokage began their clash. The Anbu brandished dual kunai while the Shodai kept to his bare fists, encasing the appendage in chakra, while the Nadaime called a discarded kunai to his hand. The sounds of clashing metal rang out over the confined rooftop. The force of the collision made the four combatants separate, with the Anbu landing back on the wall while the Hokage landed close to its base. Wasting no time, three of the Anbu rushed forward while Taka remained on the wall. Taka used the basics of Doden manipulation to drop chunks of the wall where the Sandaime and the Anbu created the large structure. Anime and manga. Zou lead his subordinates into the fray, using Doden chakra to reinforce his kunai against his foe. Inu followed his captain's lead with the Doden chakra as Baku channeled lightning through his own. Once he dropped a significant amount of earth from the wall, Taka rushed to join his comrades, channeling Futon chakra through his kunai. Zou clashed with Shodai's fists as the Nadaime attempted to fly over his brother and stab the captain in the head. Trusting his comrades, Zou didn't shift his attention. His trust was well met as the Nadaime's attack was stopped by Inu as one of his empowered kunai deflected the Nadaime's while his second found its home in the Nadaime's head. Instead of the usual blood, slips of paper were ejected from the wound as the former cage's body fell to the ground. Baku followed suit, attempting to skewer the Shodai only for the former cage to push off the captain's kunai, elbowing the Anbu in the chest that attempted to stab his head before landing next to his brother. As Taka charged down the wall, he noticed the paper slips from the fallen Nadaime recollect at the Nadaime's head. Sensing the incoming issue, Taka replaced on of his current kunai with one with an explosive tag wrapped around its handle. Tag out, he shouted to let his fellow Anbu know of the live explosive. The three Anbu retreated to Taka's position, landing on the wall as the explosion went off. The explosion wasn't that large, however it would definitely someone that was caught in the center of the blast. Despite the smoke, the Anbu remained vigilant. Before the smoke cleared, the Nadaime charged from the smoke, appearing as if he had taken no damage. As the Nadaime charged, the Shodai leapt high into the air to perform a pincer of their own. The Anbu wasted no time reacting. Zou let loose a Kato, Gokaku no Jutsu at the airborne Hashirama. This was responded to by a Suiden, Taihoden let loose by Hashirama that drowned out the fireball. This resulted in minor flooding in the area and releasing a light amount of steam into the air. As soon as the jutsu were released, the remaining Anbu sprang into action, with Inu moving forward to intercept the Nadaime if he gets any closer, while Baku leapt up to reinforce his captain. Taka let out a Raiden, Sandabaruto at the Nadaime. Though most of the technique was dodged, its use of targeting multiple foes was used to successfully strike the Nadaime as he weaved around most of the bolts, forcing him back to the wall's base. The Nadaime was taken out of commission for the time being, which allowed the Anbu to focus on the Shodai. In response, Hashirama threw out Mokuden, Sashiki no Jutsu. The small branches flew towards the Anbu at incredible speed, forcing them to dodge. Sadly, Baku was not able to dodge entirely. A branch struck his left leg, where it exploded into multiple spears that went through not only his leg but also pierced his abdomen. The combination of the impalement and the fall from his position on the wall lead to him being taken out of the fight. Despite the loss of their comrade, the Anbu remained vigilant. The Nadaime released his own jutsu that went unnoticed by the Anbu until its casting. While running up the remaining earth wall, he unleashed Doden, Tsuchi Nami no Jutsu, further destabilizing the wall as many waves have passed through the earthen structure. The Anbu shifted their attention to their footing to make sure they didn't fall, though this left an opening that the zombie cage took advantage of this by striking out at the distracted Anbu. The Anbu fell victim to one of the truths of the shinobi world. A single distraction could cost you your life. The Shodai struck the destabilized wall, breaking it into several large pieces. Zou and Taka were able to escape unharmed, Sadly, Inu fell to a stab from Tobarama, who imbued the kunai he retrieved with Raton chakra to make sure it went through his target. The two remaining Anbu landed on the ground only to be beset on by the Senju brothers, who each let loose a hard punch that smashed the two Anbu into the ground. Once the impact was made, the two Anbu were revealed to be nothing but piles of mud. Before the zombie duo reacted, the Anbu quickly stabbed two explosive tags into the Senju brothers. However, let it be said that the two were not inexperienced. Even in their weakened state, the brothers knew what to do. As the kunai struck, they had thrown themselves into the strike, allowing the kunai to travel through them, and grabbed a hold of the Anbu's arms. The tags went off, turning both of the revived cages to paper slips once more. The explosion nearly both Anbu, however they were able to substitute once more with the mud available, but at a cost. Taka had taken a lot of the concussive force as well as the cauterization of the stump that once held the explosive tag, while Captain Zo merely lost his arm. Seeing no other solution and to keep his semi-living comrade safe, Zo regrouped with his Hokage, the Senju brothers pursuing him. "I'm sorry, Hokage-sama. My squad and I were unable to defeat them," apologized Zo. Hiruzen could only look to his Anbu with regret and self-loathing. If he had stopped Orochimaru before he fled the village, then 3 more of his shinobi would not be dead due to his inaction. "Well, what will you do now, Sarutobi-sensei? Your Anbu are gone save one. You don't think you can protect him and defeat us, do you?" taunted Orochimaru. Hiruzen took in a deep breath, resigning himself to the fact he will fall this day to stop this threat to his home. Believing his Hokage's hesitancy to be related to his inability to fight, "Do not worry about me, Hokage-sama. Your safety is our priority. If you must let me fall to defeat those in front of us, do not hesitate to do so," commented Zo. Hiruzen looked to his remaining Anbu out of the corner of his eye. It was against those of Konoha to sacrifice their comrades, and Hiruzen decided to remind his Anbu of that. "We are Konoha shinobi. We do not sacrifice our comrades," boasted Hiruzen as he set down Enma. Hiruzen went through several signs that no one alive was familiar with after creating 2 cage buncheons. "Zo, I ask you to help me one last time." Zo was hesitant but not at all the same, "Of course, Hokage-sama." At these words, Zo retrieved one more kunai from under his coat as he prepared to give his life for his Hokage. Suddenly a cold feeling blanketed the area, but not one of low temperature. Instead, it felt like the shadow of death was near, and it affected everyone, including the dead. What none could see, aside from Hiruzen himself, was the spectral form of the Shinigami. The Shinigami is a translucent specter with the visage of a demon that towered over any human. It has long, shaggy white hair which has 2 red horns that sprung out from its forehead and purple-hued skin complemented by long sharp teeth. It was clad in a white kimono with a set of prayer beads in its right arm. Within its teeth was an unsheathed tanto which it held by the handle, which also hid its long serpentine tongue. When the being first appeared, its arms were spread wide as it held the sleeves of its kimono. Held on the deity's chest was the Sandame's soul. The Shinigami then performed a ceremony where it allowed its prayer beads to loosely wrap around its right arm that was painstakingly slow. As the beads fell down its arm, markings crawled down its arm. Orochimaru was getting impatient. "What did you do, Sarutobi-sensei? He performed a set of seals, yet nothing has yet to happen. What is his jutsu?" thought Orochimaru. Zo was thinking the same thing as the traitorous Sanin. He was unsure of what his Hokage was doing but kept his faith all the same. Tired of waiting, Orochimaru had Hashirama cast one of the most powerful illusions ever created, Kokuangyo no Jutsu. A blanket of darkness covered the roof, denying sight to Hiruzen, his buncheons, and Zo, who managed to get in front of Hiruzen before his vision was restricted. Sadly, Hiruzen was forced to keep his hands clapped together, so he was unable to retrieve Enma. Within the darkness, Orochimaru struck out at Hiruzen, however Enma would retake his normal form and disarm the hubby Sanin by having the blade fly towards Hiruzen. He used his sense of smell and acute hearing to get around the blinding effects. He was soon bounded for his effort by the Tsunade Jashu, which had him fall at the Sanin's feet. It was then that Hiruzen moved. He rushed forward and managed to find his targets with the aid of Enma shouting out their locations. Orochimaru didn't bother to stop the Monkey King as he wanted to see what his former sensei's jutsu did. Anime and manga, Hiruzen, and by extension, his bunchins grabbed onto the collar of the zombified Hokage as well as Orochimaru. "Now!" shouted the Sandame. At his word the Shinigami sent its bead-wrapped arm through the Sandame's soul and grabbed the souls of Hashirama and Tobirama. Once it had a firm grasp on their souls, the Shinigami began to drag their souls from their bodies, which released them from the hubby Sanin's control. "Sorry Sarutobi," said Hashirama, "forgive us for troubling you," were Tobirama's final words. "And forgive me senseis, for not allowing you to rest proper," said Hiruzen as the souls of his predecessors were sealed into him. What happened next would terrify Orochimaru. When Hiruzen grabbed a hold of the hubby Sanin, he was now able to see the Shinigami. Orochimaru began to panic at the sight of the Shinigami. Using his index and middle fingers of his right hand, Orochimaru was able to call the Kusanagi towards him, much to the surprise of Enma and Zo. He intended to use the weapon to skewer the Sandame. As the Shinigami began to drag out Orochimaru's soul, the blade was about to make contact with Hiruzen. "Die!" they both shouted. Just as the blade was about to pierce his chest, Zo and Enma acted quickly. Zo managed to redirect the weapon while Enma grabbed a hold of the blade. Sadly, this meant the weapon pierced the Sandame's lung but not his heart. Hiruzen coughed up the blood that began to fill his lungs due to the stab. Orochimaru smiled in triumph, believing that it was now his victory. "He. It seems that it is my victory, Sarutobi-sensei," the pale man gloated. Hiruzen could only give a weak smile in return. "You may believe so. However, this jutsu requires the user to sacrifice their life to their target." At this Orochimaru began to panic. If his sensei was willing to himself, just what was the jutsu he was caught by? He was feeling himself grow weaker. But not due to lack of chakra. It was something else. What was the apparition that was behind his sensei?